At a wedding we attended, my husband spent the entire night attached to his coworker dancing and laughing, while I barely registered in his periphery. When someone asked if he was married, he answered with a casual dismissal. Not really. It doesn't count when it's not interesting. Laughter filled the hall. I stood there paralyzed. The next morning he would wake up alone and I would wake up to my own worth. Is he married? The woman asked, loud enough for half the wedding guests to hear. I watched James glance at me, his wife of 4 years, then turn back to the stranger with that easy smile of his. Not really. It doesn't count when it's not interesting. The words hung in the air as Sophia giggled beside him, her hand on his arm. I remained seated, my champagne flute frozen halfway to my lips, as the entire table erupted in laughter. That was 3 hours ago. Now I'm in our Upper East Side apartment at 5:30 a.m., making his favorite breakfast, replaying those words as I decide exactly how interesting my revenge will be. Before we continue, if you've ever been called boring or uninteresting by someone who should cherish you, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more people who need to hear this. Now let's see what Catherine does next. The eggs sizzled in the pan. 2 sunny-side-up yolks, runny whites, perfectly set, with no crispy edges, just how James demanded them. My hands moved on autopilot, following a routine perfected over 4 years. Mashing the avocado with exactly half a lime and a pinch of sea salt. Spreading it on a slice of sourdough toasted to that specific golden brown hue. A long black coffee with a splash of oat milk. The same breakfast I'd made yesterday and the day before, and every day since we moved into this ridiculously expensive apartment he claimed they needed for his image. His first alarm went off at 6:15 a.m., then 6:20 and 6:25. I heard him groan and hit snooze, knowing he'd later blame me for not waking him up properly. Through the thin walls of our pre-war building, I could hear the neighbor's TV tuned to the morning news. Something about the Dow Jones. James would want to know the numbers. He'd pretend to understand them over breakfast while texting Sophia about their morning meeting. I found myself staring at the receipt that had fallen out of his jacket pocket yesterday. 2 lattes from the trendy spot on Green Street dated at 3:47 p.m. When did 1 coffee become 2? When did grabbing coffee with a colleague become a daily ritual that didn't include me? I slipped the receipt back where I'd found it. Let him think I was still the clueless wife who never checked pockets, never questioned the late nights, never wondered why Sophia's name lit up his phone more than mine. At 6:45, James finally shuffled into the kitchen, hair tousled, already looking at his phone. No, good morning. No kiss. Just a grunt of acknowledgement, as he sat at our small dining table, his thumb scrolling furiously. Sophia needs me to look over her presentation before the morning meeting, he announced, without looking up. Might be a late one tonight, too. The Ortega Project is on fire. The Ortega Project. Everything was the Ortega Project lately. I placed his plate in front of him, watching as he took a flavorless bite, his eyes still glued to the phone. A notification popped up Sophia's face in a small circle, smiling. He smiled back at the screen, a genuine, warm expression he hadn't aimed at me in months. The wedding is tonight, I reminded him. The Worthingtons. You promised you'd come. What? He finally looked up, confused, as if I'd spoken another language. Oh, right. Yeah, of course. What time? 6. The invitation has been on the fridge for 3 months. He was already back to his phone. Sophia might be there too. She knows the Worthingtons from some charity thing. That cool with you? I watched him eat mechanically, replying to Sophia's texts between bites. Was it cool with me? Did it matter what I said? Sophia would show up anyway in a tight, expensive dress, and James would light up like a Christmas tree the second she walked in. Just like at the company holiday party. Just like at every team dinner that somehow no longer included spouses. Sure, I said, turning back to the sink. The more the merrier. At 7:15, he rushed out, leaving his breakfast half-eaten and his dirty coffee mug on the table. Late for Sophia's presentation, he called from the hallway. Not a goodbye, not an I love you, not even a thank you for breakfast. Just always Sophia. I cleared his dishes and sat at the table with my own coffee, opening my laptop. My inbox from Sterling Prep showed 17 new emails. Parents wanting conferences, students submitting essays late, admin reminders about AP exams. My real life. The one where I was Miss, Taylor respected and competent, where high school sophomores listened when I spoke, and parents thanked me for helping their kids understand The Great Gatsby. At noon, I'd be in front of my English literature class debating Jay Gatsby with 27 teenagers who thought they knew everything about love and betrayal. Emma Martinez, my brightest student, would inevitably ask one of her probing questions that cut straight to uncomfortable truths. Last week, she'd asked if Gatsby ever really loved Daisy, or if he just loved what she represented. I'd deflected with literary analysis, but the question haunted me. Later, I would drive out to Greenwich for my secret tutoring session with the Ortega twins. Yes, those Ortegas, whose project was supposedly keeping James and Sophia so busy. Their mother paid me $300 cash per session, money I tucked into an account James didn't know existed. I told him I was saving for a surprise anniversary trip. In reality, I was building something else entirely. A getaway fund, an independence fund, a just-in-case fund that grew bigger every week. The apartment felt smaller this morning, suffocating. The exposed brick wall that had seemed charming when we moved in now felt like a prison wall. The designer furniture James had insisted on felt like props in someone else's life. Even the morning light streaming through our large windows seemed fake, too bright, illuminating a life that looked perfect from the outside but was rotting from within. I picked up my phone and looked at James's Instagram. There she was, Sophia, in a team photo from yesterday's lunch. Sophia laughing at a birthday celebration I hadn't known about. Sophia standing next to my husband at a conference I thought he'd attended alone. Sophia. 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 The woman who had somehow become more present in my marriage than I was. But tonight would be different. Tonight, at the Worthington wedding, surrounded by people who knew us as a couple, James would have to acknowledge me. He'd have to introduce me as his wife, sit next to me at dinner, maybe even dance with me if I was lucky. For a few hours, I would exist in his world as more than the boring woman who made his breakfast and paid half his rent. I closed my laptop and headed to the bedroom to pick out my wedding attire. The black cocktail dress, hanging in the closet, would do. Simple, elegant, appropriate. James would glance at it later and say nice without really looking the way he said everything lately. Nice. Appropriate. Boring. But as I stood there running my fingers over the fabric, those words from 3 hours in the future echoed backward in time. It doesn't count when it's not interesting. The valet took forever to bring our car, and James checked his phone every 30 seconds, his jaw tightening with each passing moment. The Worthingtons' wedding venue, a sprawling Long Island estate, loomed before us. A converted mansion with marble columns that stretched 3 stories high, uplit with soft golden lights that made the whole building glow against the night sky. Sophia just texted. She's already inside, James said, practically bouncing on his heels. We need to hurry. I adjusted my black dress one last time. The fabric suddenly felt cheaper than it had in our bedroom. Other couples were arriving, the wives in jewel-toned gowns that caught the light, their husbands offering an arm as they ascended the stone steps. James was already walking ahead, phone still in hand. The ballroom doors opened to reveal a sea of round tables draped in ivory linens, with centerpieces of cascading white orchids and roses. A string quartet played something classical in one corner, the kind of music that made everyone lower their voices and feel more sophisticated. I saw familiar faces from James's office, from my college days, from the neighborhood. Everyone looked polished, happy, paired off. "Catherine, my God, finally!" Lucy's voice cut through the conversational murmur. My college roommate appeared wrapped in emerald green silk, her husband David trailing behind with 2 glasses of champagne. She gave me a hug that lasted a second too long, then pulled back to study my face with the kind of concern that meant my under-eye concealer wasn't doing its job. "You look tired, honey," she whispered, her hand still on my arm. "Is everything okay?" Before I could answer, James was already scanning the room over my shoulder, his body angled away from our conversation. Lucy followed my gaze, watching my husband search the crowd with the intensity of someone looking for their lost luggage at baggage claim. "She's by the bar," David offered, helpfully oblivious to the weight of his words. "Sophia, right, from your office. She was asking for you earlier, James." The transformation was instant. James's face lit up. His shoulders straightened, and he suddenly looked like the man I'd married, animated, engaged, present. Except none of that energy was directed at me. "Be right back," he said, already in motion. "Just have to go say hi." Lucy and I watched him weave through the crowd, navigating between tables and clusters of guests with single-minded purpose. David excused himself to find their seats, leaving Lucy and me standing there like abandoned lighthouses. "How long has this been going on?" Lucy asked quietly. "What do you mean?" The lie came out automatically, even though we both knew the truth. She didn't push. Instead, she took my arm and guided me toward the bar, making small talk about her kids, her new job, anything but the obvious. But I wasn't listening. I was watching James reach Sophia. The crimson dress should have looked garish in a sea of pastels and navy, but on Sophia it looked like confidence, like power, like everything I wasn't. Her blonde hair fell in waves that probably cost more than my entire outfit. As James approached, she turned to him like a flower seeking the sun, her entire body lighting up in recognition. I watched him help her with her wrap, a delicate silver thing that had slipped off her shoulders. His hands lingered there, adjusting fabric that didn't need adjusting as she tilted her head back and laughed at something he said. The sound carried across the ballroom, bright and tinkling, drawing the eyes of other guests. Inside joke from yesterday's meeting, I heard Sophia say as Lucy and I drew closer. You should have seen Peterson's face when you said that thing about the quarterly projections. That thing about the quarterly projections. They had inside jokes. The meeting yesterday that probably stretched into dinner yesterday and drinks yesterday. Lucy's hand found mine and squeezed. She understood without words the way good friends do. We found our table number 12 tucked in a corner with a partially obstructed view of the dance floor. James's place card was next to mine, but his chair remained empty through the first course, the speeches, and the first dance. When the DJ invited all the guests to join the newlyweds on the floor, James materialized with Sophia in tow. "They're playing our song," she squealed, and I wondered when they had developed a song. Remember, from the Ortega Project celebration dinner, the Ortega Project. Everything always came back to the Ortega Project. "Just one dance," James said, not really asking already, leading Sophia away. "You don't mind, do you, Kate?" "Did I mind?" The question hung in the air for half a second before they were gone, swept into the throng of dancing couples. I watched them move together with an ease that spoke of practice. His hand knew exactly where to rest on her waist. She knew exactly how to tilt her head to maintain eye contact as they spun. One dance turned into two as the DJ seamlessly transitioned to another slow song. Two turned into three when Sophia requested something specific, batting her eyelashes at the DJ, like they were old friends. By the fourth song, other guests had started to notice. Conversations would trail off mid-sentence. Eyes would follow their progress across the floor. The mother of the bride, Mrs. Worthington herself, glanced at me from across the room and offered a sympathetic smile that felt worse than outright pity. By the fifth dance, I'd stopped pretending to look at my phone and just sat there with my untouched champagne, watching my husband dance with another woman, while everyone else watched me watch them. Lucy had tried to make conversation, but even she had run out of small talk. That's when Beatrice Worthington descended on our table like a perfumed vulture in a Street John suit. She sat in James's empty chair with the authority of someone who owns every room she enters. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Beatrice Susan's mother. Catherine Taylor, I managed. I went to college with Rebecca." "Oh, how lovely." Her voice had that carrying quality that was meant to be overheard. "And that handsome man dancing with the blonde, is he with you?" I felt the blood drain from my face. Lucy started to interject, but Beatrice waved her off. "They make a beautiful couple," Beatrice continued loud enough for the next table to turn and look. "The way they move together, like they've been dancing for years. Is he married, dear?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine. I could see James and Sophia making their way back to the table, both flushed from dancing. Sophia's hand was possessive on his arm. They were laughing about something, their heads close together, completely oblivious to the small audience that had gathered around our conversation. "Well," Beatrice pressed her voice, now carrying 3 tables away. "Is he married, your handsome friend?" James heard her. I saw the moment the question registered. I saw him process it. I saw him look at me. His wife of 4 years. The woman who'd supported him through his Wharton MBA, who'd moved to New York for his career, who'd spent countless nights alone while he worked late with Sophia. He smiled. That easy, charming smile that had made me fall for him in a coffee shop 6 years ago. "Not really," he said, his voice echoing in our corner of the ballroom. "It doesn't count when it's not interesting." The laughter was immediate. Sophia tittered behind her manicured fingers. Beatrice Worthington practically shrieked with delight. The couple at the next table exchanged knowing glances. Even the waiter refilling water glasses smirked. I stood up slowly, my movements deliberate and controlled. The champagne glass made a soft clink as I set it down. All eyes in our section were on me now, waiting for tears, for drama, for the boring wife to finally provide some entertainment. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady as granite. "I need some air." Sophia's voice followed me as I walked away. "Did I say something wrong?" "Don't worry about it," James replied, loud enough for me to hear. "She always gets dramatic at events." The restroom was thankfully empty. I locked myself in the farthest stall and just stood there breathing slowly through my nose. No tears came. My hands didn't shake. Instead, a strange calm was settling over me like watching storm clouds clear after years of rain. I walked out and faced myself in the gold-framed mirror. My mascara hadn't run. My lipstick was still perfect. I looked exactly the same as the woman who had walked into this wedding 3 hours ago, hoping her husband would remember she existed. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. A door had closed. A decision had crystallized. I walked back through the ballroom, not stopping at our table. James was on the dance floor again with Sophia, both of them laughing at something the DJ had said. Lucy caught my eye, started to get up, but I gave her a slight shake of my head. This wasn't her problem to solve. The valet seemed surprised to see me alone. "Leaving so soon, ma'am?" "Yes," I said, handing him the ticket. "Just me. The drive home should have taken 20 minutes. I stretched it to an hour, winding through the quiet streets of Soho, the windows down despite the biting March chill. The air stung my cheeks, making my eyes water in a way that had nothing to do with crying. At a red light on West Broadway, I remembered the acceptance letter from NYU's PhD program in American literature. I was 26. I was full of promise, brilliant according to my professors. But James had just gotten into Wharton for his MBA, and we couldn't afford both. "Your career is more flexible," he'd said. "You can always go back to school." That was 5 years ago. The promotion at Sterling Prep I'd turned down because it would have meant afternoon classes, weekend grading, and less time to support James's networking events. The department head had been stunned. "This opportunity won't come around again, Catherine." But James needed me to be available. He needed the steady income while he established himself. The fertility specialist appointments I'd canceled last year. 3 months of tests and procedures. Then James's sudden announcement that he wasn't ready, that he might never be, and shouldn't I just focus on being happy with what we had? I'd thrown out the medication, deleted the doctor's number, pretended my body hadn't been preparing for something that would never come. By the time I reached our building, the strange calm had morphed into something harder, colder. Purpose, maybe, or just the absence of hope that finally brought clarity. Our apartment was dark, silent, waiting. I moved through it like a ghost with a mission. In the bedroom, I pulled my weekender bag from the closet, the one I'd bought for a weekend getaway we never took. My grandmother's pearl necklace went in first, wrapped in tissue paper. Then her matching earrings. The engagement ring she wore for 60 years before leaving it to me. From the hall closet, I carefully removed the china. She had also left me a 1-2-piece setting of Lenox that James had wanted to sell, because who needs fine china? Each piece was wrapped in the bubble wrap I'd saved from Amazon deliveries. Those plates had survived the Great Depression and 2 cross-country moves. They weren't going to stay here to watch my marriage die. My laptop was next. I sat at the kitchen table and systematically downloaded 3 years of financial records. Our joint checking account, the credit cards, his spending patterns, restaurant charges in places I'd never been, hotel rooms in Manhattan when he was supposedly at conferences, a $3,200 charge at Cartier last month that hadn't produced a little red box for me. I screenshotted everything. Every receipt, every statement, every lie translated into digital proof. The tutoring money I'd stashed wasn't in our usual bank. For 3 years, I'd been depositing cash into an account at a completely different institution. $27,000 from teaching wealthy teenagers how to ace their SATs while their parents thought I was becoming a more centered person through yoga. My teaching awards from Sterling Prep went into a box. Excellence in Education 2019. Most Dedicated Teacher 2020. Innovation in Literature Curriculum 2021. James had never attended the ceremonies. School stuff, he'd called it, as if I were a child showing off a drawing. At exactly 11 p.m., I sat at the kitchen table with his keyring. The apartment key was the first to come off. Then the mailbox key, the gym locker key, the spare to his parents' house in Greenwich. I kept removing them until only his car key was left alone on the ring like a question mark. His laptop was password protected, but I knew all his passwords. He used the same 3 in rotation since college. I logged into our Netflix account and changed the password. Then Hulu, HBO Max, Amazon Prime, the grocery delivery service, the meal kit subscription he'd insisted we needed. Every shared digital space we had created, I systematically, methodically locked him out of. His LinkedIn profile was the masterpiece. I didn't delete it or write anything crude. Just a simple update to his current position, currently exploring new opportunities following personal conflicts with a colleague that impacted team dynamics. Vague enough to be professional, specific enough to raise red flags for any recruiter who bothered to check. I found the business card Mark had given me at the company party last year. Sophia's fiancé, deployed for 6 months on a mission in Eastern Europe, completely unaware his future wife was playing office romance with my husband. I uploaded the photos I'd taken tonight, James's hand on Sophia's waist, her head thrown back in laughter, the two of them closer than colleagues should be. I wrote a simple subject line. Thought you should see what Sophia was up to at the Worthington wedding. My wedding ring came off easier than I expected. 4 years of wearing it, and it slid off like it had never belonged there. I placed it on James's pillow with a note. You were right. It didn't count. I'm not interesting enough to fight for someone who was never really mine. At 11:47 p.m., I was pulling into the driveway of my sister Hannah's house in a small town in Vermont. The weekender bag and the boxes of china were secure in my trunk. Her porch light was on. She'd been waiting ever since my text from 3 hours ago. Coming to stay. We'll explain later. No questions, no demands for details. Just drive safe. The guest room is ready. Wine was already decanting on her kitchen counter when I walked in. Hannah took one look at my face and poured 2 generous glasses without a word. We sat at her solid wood table, the one she'd salvaged from a flea market and spent months restoring. And I finally allowed myself to exhale. He said I wasn't interesting, I told her. At a wedding. In front of everyone. Hannah's knuckles went white around her wine glass, but she just nodded. She had never liked James. She'd called him aggressively mediocre after meeting him for the first time. I should have listened to her. I turned my phone off completely and slept like a stone in her guest room, surrounded by quilts she'd made during her crafting phase and the smell of lavender from her garden. For the first time in months, maybe years, I dreamed of nothing at all. The assault began at exactly 7:03 a.m. Hannah knocked softly, holding my phone. It's been ringing off the hook since 6:30, 27 calls from the same number. Not James's number, though. I took the phone, saw the unknown NYC number, and knew immediately. He was calling from the building's intercom because he couldn't get in. I powered it on, and the screen exploded with notifications. 43 missed calls. 19 voicemails. 67 text messages. The first voicemail was timestamped 6:31 a.m. Catherine, what the hell did you do to the locks? This isn't funny. I'm locked out of my own apartment. His voice was more confused than angry, still in denial. The second at 6:45 a.m. Seriously, this is ridiculous. I have a meeting at 8. Fix the locks now. At 6:52 a.m. panic had crept in. My credit card was just declined at Starbucks. What is going on? Did you cancel my cards? At 7:01 a.m. Full-blown rage. You're insane. You can't just kick me out and steal my money. This is illegal. I'm calling the police. I'm calling a lawyer. You are going to regret this, Catherine. You psycho bitch. I deleted the rest without listening. Hannah sat beside me, reading the texts over my shoulder. Most were variations on the same theme, demands, threats. Then buried among them one from an unknown number. I'm Sophia. I don't know what you said to Mark, but you've ruined everything. I hope you're happy. Mark is her fiancé, I explained to Hannah. Marine deployed. I sent him pictures from last night. Hannah let out a real laugh. You sent evidence to the other woman's military boyfriend. Catherine, I didn't know you had it in you. My phone rang. James again from the intercom. This time I finally answered. Catherine, what is wrong with you? Open the damn door right now. Good morning to you too. I took a sip of the coffee Hannah had made strong with fresh milk from the local farm. Don't you dare. Where are you? Why aren't you here? The locks aren't working. I've removed your access. You'll have to find other arrangements. Other arrangements. This is my apartment. Actually, it's Mr. Garcia's apartment. And as of this morning, you are no longer on the lease. Silence. I could hear his ragged, shallow breathing. You can't do that. It's already done. Check your email. 30. Day notice to vacate. Mr. Garcia was very understanding when I explained the situation. What situation? What did you tell him? The truth. That my husband publicly announced our marriage doesn't count because I'm not interesting enough. He seemed to think that was grounds to amend the lease. It was a joke I was drinking. Sophia thought it was funny. Is Sophia taking your calls this morning? Another pause. She's dealing with something. Mark, how did you send those pictures to Mark? He's deployed. He's serving our country. And you're serving our country while his fiancé is cozying up to married men. He deserved to know. You've ruined everything. My reputation, my job. Interesting people handle their own problems, James. I have to go. My sister's making breakfast. Catherine, wait! I hung up and blocked the intercom number. Then I called Mr. Garcia myself. Miss Taylor, his thick Brooklyn accent was heavy with sympathy. I sent the email just like you asked. 30 days he's out. You want I should change the locks anyway. That won't be necessary. The digital locks are already updated. Good, good. You know my wife never liked him. Said he had snake eyes, wanderin' eyes. At 9 a.m. my phone buzzed with a different kind of call. Lucy breathless with gossip. Catherine, you are not going to believe this. David just told me. He works in HR, remember Sophia has done this before. 3 times. What at her last firm she caused a sexual harassment lawsuit between 2 married executives who were fighting over her. The company transferred her to New York to avoid the scandal. She's done this before. It's like her M.O. She targets married men in power positions, creates these emotional messes, and then plays the victim when it all blows up. David says there was already paperwork started to transfer her to the Lisbon office, because someone filed a complaint last month not about James, about her behavior with another married manager. James was just another target. The easiest one, probably. David says everyone in the office knew about them. The late meetings, the lunches, the constant texting. Sophia apparently told people you were separated, that the marriage was already over. We were not separated. I made him breakfast yesterday morning. I know, honey, I know. But here's the best part. Mark showed up at their office an hour ago. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. What? He got emergency leave, flew from Europe overnight, and walked into the downtown offices with a sheaf of printed-out emails and photos. David says security had to escort James out because Mark was ready to… Well, you know. Marines don't mess around. Is James okay? Why do you care? But yes, he's fine. Humiliated, but fine. Sophia, though she's thrown him completely under the bus, told everyone James had been aggressively pursuing her, that she tried to maintain professional boundaries, that she felt pressured because he was her superior. She's claiming he harassed her. Total victim mode. HR is launching an investigation. James has been suspended pending review, and Sophia is already packing her bags for Lisbon. Turns out that transfer paperwork just needed a signature. I thought of James standing on the stoop of our building this morning, locked out of the life he'd taken for granted. His credit cards dead, his reputation crumbling, his mistress abandoning him to save herself. The boring wife he'd scorned had dismantled his entire existence in less than 12 hours. Catherine, you still there? Yeah, I'm here. How do you feel? I considered the question. How did I feel? Vindicated, vicious, empty. Interesting, I said. I finally feel interesting. Lucy hung up after promising to keep me updated on the office drama, and I sat in Hannah's kitchen feeling strangely hollow despite the vindication. Hannah was at work teaching a yoga class at a studio downtown, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the incessant buzzing of my phone. Eleanor Cole's name flashed on the screen. James's mother. I'd been expecting this call since about 30 seconds after James discovered he was locked out. I let it go to voicemail twice before finally answering on her 3rd attempt. Catherine. Her voice was laden with dramatic, practiced tears, the special kind only Eleanor could muster. What have you done to my poor boy? Hello, Eleanor. He's homeless, jobless. He called me from a stranger's phone because his is dead. He spent the night in his car. His car, Catherine. He has a car. That's more than some people have. How could you be so cruel? After everything we've done for you, welcoming you into our family, Eleanor, your son, told a room full of people that our marriage doesn't count because I'm not interesting enough. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, calculating her next move. Men say things they don't mean when they've been drinking. Paul once told me I looked like his mother in a certain dress. Did I throw him out? No. Because marriage is about forgiveness. Paul, James's father, who'd had 3 affairs that Eleanor knew about and still pretended hadn't happened. The Cole family motto should have been, accountability is optional. He wasn't drunk, Eleanor. He meant every word. You're throwing away 4 years over one comment. That's childish, Catherine. Marriages have ups and downs. You work through them. Like you worked through Paul's secretary, or the tennis pro, or that woman from his book club, Silence. Then, how dare you? I dare because I'm done pretending dysfunction is normal. James learned from the best, didn't he? That wives should accept whatever crumbs of respect their husbands throw them. 20 minutes later, my own parents called. I'd been dreading this more than Eleanor's theatrics. My mom's contact photo us at last Christmas, both smiling, made my stomach turn. Honey, my mother began, her voice carefully neutral. James called us. Of course he did. He explained about the misunderstanding at the wedding. Misunderstanding. He publicly declared I wasn't interesting enough to count as his wife. My father's voice joined the call. I must have been on speaker. Catherine, honey, men say stupid things sometimes, but you have to ask yourself, were you trying hard enough to keep things interesting? The words landed like ice water. Excuse me. Well, my dad continued, oblivious to the damage he was causing. Relationships take work from both sides. Maybe you got too comfortable, stopped making an effort. When's the last time you surprised him, got dressed up just for him? I made him breakfast every single morning at 5:30. I supported him through his MBA. I gave up my PhD for his career. But did you stay interesting? My father pressed. Men need excitement, a challenge. Maybe this Sophia woman just offered something you didn't. My mother cut in. Have you two considered couples therapy, doctor? Brennan, remember her from the parish. She saved the Johnsons' marriage after his affair. This isn't about saving anything, I said, my voice flat. It's over. Don't be rash, my mother said. You're upset. Take some time. Think about your future. You're 32, Catherine. Starting over at your age isn't easy. Better than staying with someone who publicly humiliates me. Is it really? My father asked. Better than working on your marriage. Better than admitting, maybe you both made mistakes. I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from sadness but from rage. My own parents, the people who raised me, thought I should have tried harder to be interesting for a man who was emotionally cheating on me with his coworker. Hannah walked in during my third glass of wine that afternoon, took one look at my face and said, What happened? My parents think I should have tried harder to keep his interest. She snorted, pulling groceries from a paper bag. Remember when I caught him at your wedding? I looked up. What I never told you. To keep the peace, you know. But at your wedding, your own wedding, I saw him cornering my friend Melissa by the restrooms. Hand on the wall next to her head, leaning in, telling her she had beautiful eyes. My wine glass stopped halfway to my mouth. At our wedding. I told him to back off. He laughed, said he was just being friendly. But Melissa was uncomfortable. She left early because of it. You never said anything. Hannah sat across from me, her face serious. Would you have believed me? You were so happy, so sure he was the one. And I thought maybe it was just the wedding champagne. Maybe I misread it. I didn't want to ruin your day with suspicion. For 4 years. 4 years of signs I ignored. My phone buzzed. An email from James. Subject, please read. Important. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Catherine, I know you're angry, but what you're doing is destructive and unnecessary. Sophia meant nothing. She was just a friend who understood my work stress. You were always so focused on your teaching your students. You didn't get the pressure I was under. I said a stupid thing at the wedding, yes. But have you never said something you didn't mean? We have 4 years of history, an apartment, a life. Don't throw it all away because your feelings are hurt. I'm willing to forgive you for the locks, the money, the humiliation at my office. We can start over. But you need to stop this vindictive behavior now. James. I read it twice, marveling at the mental gymnastics required to cast himself as the victim. He was willing to forgive me for responding to his public humiliation. The delusion was almost impressive. That night, a notification from our bank sent a chill down my spine. Large withdrawal from joint savings. I logged in immediately. $3,000 transferred this morning. Then another $2,000 this afternoon. He was draining what was left before I could stop it. I called the bank, but they explained that as a joint account holder, he had every right to withdraw funds. Unless I could prove fraud, which I couldn't, the money was gone. I went back through 3 months of statements, really studying them for the first time. Hotel charges in Manhattan during conferences that were supposedly in other cities. Restaurant bills for 2, always 2, at places I'd never been. Theater tickets, concert tickets, even a wine-tasting weekend in Napa. Last month when he'd said he was visiting his brother. I took screenshots of every suspicious charge, every hotel receipt, every dinner for 2 I never attended. The Napa trip was what hurt the most. I had spent that weekend helping a teacher friend set up her classroom for the new school year, while James was supposedly bonding with his brother in Chicago. The evidence file on my laptop grew thicker with every uncovered lie. My phone rang just as I finished documenting the last 3 months. Unknown NYC number. Hello, Mrs. Cole, this is Beatrice Worthington. the gossip queen from the wedding. I braced for another round of humiliation. Beatrice, dear, I owe you an apology. Her voice was different, softer, without its usual theatrical edge. What happened at Susan's wedding was unconscionable. I provoked that situation and I am deeply sorry. I didn't know what to say. Beatrice Worthington had never apologized for anything in her life. I thought you should know, she continued, that several guests recorded the incident on their phones. The video is, well, it's making the rounds in New York society. Someone added a caption, "How not to treat your wife. Your husband has become quite infamous. The video is circulating, like wildfire, dear. At the Petermans' dinner party last night, it was all anyone could talk about. That Sophia creature's reputation is equally destroyed, of course. To go after a married man at a wedding, the nerve." She paused, then added quietly, "I've been married 43 years, Catherine. Paul has his faults, but he has never not once failed to acknowledge me as his wife. What your husband did wasn't just cruel, it was cowardly. You deserve better. And frankly, I should have said so at the wedding instead of fanning the flames. Thank you, Beatrice. I'll keep you apprised of any developments. New York society has a long memory for scandals like this." She hung up, leaving me stunned. Beatrice Worthington, the woman who lived for drama, had just become an ally. The next surprise came an hour later. Another unknown number, this time with a military base prefix. "Is this Catherine Taylor?" "Yes." "This is Mark Torres, Sophia's fiancé." "Well, ex-fiancé." My stomach clenched. "Mark, I am so sorry, don't be. You did me a favor. I'm calling because I think we might be able to help each other." "Help each other? I've been going through Sophia's emails." She forwarded a lot of work correspondence to her personal account. "There are messages between her and your husband that are, well, they're revealing. They called us the placeholders. Said we were stable but boring, and good for their careers." Each word was another piece clicking into place. "They discussed us like we were furniture, useful, but replaceable. There's a thread where your husband promises to recommend Sophia for a senior position once he makes partner in exchange for her continued attention and discretion. Dated 6 weeks ago. He was trading promotions for an affair. Looks like it. I'm sending you everything. Use it however you need to. Catherine, there's more. Sophia did this at her last firm in Chicago and the one before that in Boston. It's a pattern. She targets married men in leadership, creates a dependency, and then leverages it for her own career ad colment. How do you know I have friends who know how to do research? Military intelligence training comes in handy. I'm meeting with her former victims this week. I'm building a case. A case. She destroyed our relationships for sport and profit. That has consequences. I'll be in touch." He hung up before I could respond. Within minutes, my email pinged with a zip file labeled Evidence. 23 email threads between Sophia and James, each one more damning than the last. The next morning brought another unexpected turn. I arrived at Sterling Prep early, hoping to prep my lessons in peace. Instead, I found the headmistress, Dr. Martinez, waiting in my classroom with coffee and a kind smile. "Catherine, news travels fast in our community," she began gently. "Several parents have reached out to express their support. They are appalled by what happened." My cheeks burned. "Beatrice Worthington's granddaughter is in your sophomore class. Beatrice has been very vocal about the situation. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. However, Dr. Martinez continued, this has led to something positive. 3 families have specifically requested you for private tutoring. The Morgans, the Chens, and the Williamses. All full SAT prep packages. At $300 an hour, that was nearly $10,000 in potential income. Also, she slid a business card across my desk. Andrea Williams is a partner at Williams & Frost. She asked me to give you this. She's offering pro bono legal services for your divorce proceedings." I took the card speechless. Her exact words were, "Women need to support women who know their worth." She also mentioned she's handled several cases against your husband's firm. Apparently, they have a history of protecting employees who engage in inappropriate conduct. That afternoon, I met with Andrea Williams in her office, a sleek space overlooking Park Avenue. She was everything I wasn't: tall, imposing, with the kind of presence that silenced courtrooms. "I've reviewed the preliminary information," she said, spreading documents across the conference table. "Your husband made several critical errors. The draining of the joint account, the LinkedIn tampering, the public humiliation, all documented. With Mark Torres's evidence and the wedding video, we have a solid case for a contested divorce with significant penalties. I don't want his money. I just want out. Noble but foolish. He's been spending marital assets on his affair. You are entitled to compensation. Let me handle the legal strategy. You focus on rebuilding your life. That evening, back in what would soon be James's former apartment, I sorted through the rest of my things. I still had keys, the physical ones he couldn't revoke digitally. The place felt different, smaller somehow, like it had already forgotten me. In the bedroom closet, behind his collection of expensive suits, I noticed a shoebox I'd never seen before. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the kind self-important people buy to document their important thoughts. I flipped it open to a random page. Year 3 with C. Maintain status quo until I make senior partner. She provides stability, respectability. Parents approve. Post-promotion reevaluate. S. Shows more potential for long-term adcolement. C. Too content with teaching. No ambition. 5. Year exit strategy on track. My initials reduced to a letter. Our marriage reduced to a business plan. I photographed every page, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. His own handwriting, his own words, planning my disposal like I was an outdated laptop. The last journal entry was dated just 2 weeks ago. C. Still clueless. Sophia agrees to Lisbon after my promotion. A fresh start. No dead weight. I closed the journal, put it back in the shoebox, and took it with me. This was evidence now, not just his private thoughts, but a written confession of fraud, emotional, financial, marital, spanning years. Andrea Williams called that night as I was organizing everything for our legal strategy. The papers are ready, she said, her voice holding that lawyerly edge that meant business. Process server is scheduled for Sunday at 1 p.m. Is your husband's parents' address correct? Sunday lunch. He never misses it when he needs comforting. Perfect. Nothing like a family audience for accountability. Sunday arrived gray and rainy, matching the mood. At 1:37 p.m. my phone rang. Eleanor Cole, right on schedule. You vindictive witch, she screamed before I could say hello. How dare you humiliate him in our home? In front of his father, his brother, the children. Eleanor, your son humiliated me in front of hundreds at a wedding. This seems proportionate. They served him divorce papers at our table. During the blessing, Father Murphy was here, better than I could have imagined. Public humiliation seems to run in the family, Eleanor. He dished it out. Now he's getting it back. You've destroyed him, his career, his future. He destroyed them himself. I just stopped hiding the rubble. She hung up. But not before I heard James screaming in the background about calling his lawyer, about defamation, about destroying me in court. Monday morning, my recruiter friend Diana texted me. You have to see this. She sent a screenshot from LinkedIn. Someone had captured James's profile during the brief window I'd edited it. Currently exploring new opportunities following personal conflicts with a colleague that impacted team dynamics. The screenshot was making the rounds on New York's professional networks, with the wedding video attached. The comments were brutal. This is why we need better HR policies. Imagine torching your marriage and your career for an office fling. My firm would never hire someone with this judgment. Poor wife, at least she got out. Diana's next text, his profile views are down 90% this week. Recruiters are actively avoiding him. Even his uncle's insurance brokerage rescinded their offer, she added. Nobody wants that liability. Wednesday was the mediation meeting. Andrea had prepped me extensively, but nothing could have prepared me for seeing James again. He looked smaller somehow, his suit rumpled, his perfect hair disheveled. Sophia's absence was palpable. She had refused to attend, claiming she was the victim in all of this. Her lawyer, a tired-looking man named Gerard, opened with the standard demands. My client seeks a clean 50/50 split of assets and alimony given Miss Taylor's increased earning potential as a teacher with tutoring income. Andrea actually laughed. Your client wants alimony. Let's review, shall we? She spread the bank statements across the table with theatrical precision. Miss Taylor paid 70% of the household expenses during Mr. Cole's MBA at Wharton. She highlighted line after line with a yellow marker. Rent, utilities, groceries, even his student loan payments, all while maintaining her teaching position and taking on extra classes to support them. That was a mutual investment in their future, Gerard began. A future he was planning to abandon. Andrea produced the photocopied journal bound like a court document. Page 47, dated 18 months ago, 3 more years to partner, then see exit strategy. Page 63, sees stability is useful for the settled family man look. Important for senior partnership. Page 89. Sophia shows more promise for a power couple dynamic. Gerard's face went pale. James's went red. That's private. She stole that. Your client documented his intent to commit marital fraud. Andrea continued using his wife for financial and social stability while planning to discard her. Sophia's name appears. She paused for effect 247 times in these pages. That's roughly once every 3 days for 2 years. This is ridiculous, James exploded. She contributed nothing. I was building our future while she was playing with high school kids. She's just resentful because I found someone actually interesting. Mr. Cole, the mediator, a stern woman named Judge Chen, interrupted. You've just admitted to infidelity on the record. Andrea smiled like a shark. Would you like to discuss the $47,000 of marital assets spent on this interesting woman? Hotels, dinners, jewelry from Tiffany's. That was for clients. The client, Sophia Vargas. Because these receipts show 2 dinners, always 2 at restaurants, Miss Taylor was never present for. Gerard was whispering urgently to James, but he was no longer listening. She locked me out. She changed my LinkedIn. She destroyed my reputation. You destroyed your own reputation, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was calm, steady. I just stopped covering for you. Before he could respond, Andrea's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her shark-like grin widened. How timely. Sophia Vargas has just issued a statement through her company's HR department. She read from her phone. Mr. Cole's persistent overtures created an uncomfortable work environment. Despite my repeated attempts to maintain professional boundaries, he leveraged his senior position to pursue inappropriate contact. I felt pressured to comply to protect my career. That's a lie. James shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the floor. She pursued me. She has emails that suggest otherwise, Andrea continued. Edited, of course, but compelling. She's alleging harassment, hostile work environment, potential quid pro quo. Your former firm is launching a full investigation. Gerard snapped his briefcase shut with a sound of defeat. We need a recess. My client needs to address these new allegations. Of course, Andrea agreed. But our position is clear. Miss Taylor keeps all separate property, her savings, her earnings. Mr. Cole keeps his debt, his ruined reputation, and whatever Sophia has left him. As we gathered our things, James grabbed my arm. Catherine, please. You know me. You know I'm not what she's saying. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The golden boy I had loved 6 years ago was gone. In his place was a desperate man, whose carefully constructed life had collapsed in less than 2 weeks. I don't know you at all, I said quietly. I never did. Andrea guided me out as James shouted my name, his voice cracking with panic. The sound followed us down the hall, echoing off the marble walls that had witnessed 1,000 broken marriages, but probably few, as thoroughly destroyed as ours. Outside the building, Andrea turned to me. Sophia won't stop with that statement. She's going to bury him to save herself. By next week, he won't be able to get a job serving coffee in this town. She was right. 3 days later, the full HR report was leaked. Sophia had produced edited texts, selective emails, even a recorded call where James's words were clipped to sound predatory. His former firm issued a statement distancing themselves. His professional networks evaporated overnight. The headline in Crane's New York Business read, Former rising star faces multiple investigations. James's professional obituary. I folded the paper and left it on Hannah's kitchen table, feeling nothing but a distant relief, like hearing about a storm that passed without touching your house. It had been 6 months since that mediation meeting. The divorce was final. I'd kept my maiden name Taylor in everything but official paperwork, so going back to it felt like slipping on comfortable shoes I'd forgotten I owned. Vermont had become home in a way New York never was. I'd found a small apartment with exposed brick and a view of the mountains. I started teaching at a local private school and built a portfolio of tutoring clients that allowed me to pick and choose. On Tuesday mornings, I treated myself to coffee at the Daily Grind, a cafe where nobody knew my history, and the barista just called me the teacher who likes extra foam. This particular Tuesday, I was grading essays when a familiar voice made me look up. Catherine, my God, is that you? Beatrice Worthington stood there in a burgundy wool coat, looking slightly out of place among the fleece-clad Vermont locals. Beatrice, I put down my red pen. What brings you here? Visiting my sister. She retired up here last year. She gestured to the empty chair across from me. May I? I nodded, curious in spite of myself. Beatrice settled in with her tea, her eyes glinting with that particular sparkle that meant fresh gossip. I suppose you haven't heard the news. I don't follow the New York news much anymore. Oh, but you must hear this, she leaned in conspiratorially. James is living in his childhood bedroom at his parents' house in Greenwich. Eleanor tells everyone he's grouping and considering his options. I took a sip of my latte, waiting. He's working at his uncle's friend's car dealership, not selling cars, filing paperwork in the back office. Can you imagine? From consulting presentations to filing car warranties? It's a big change, I said neutrally. And he's dating someone new. Eleanor describes her as simple but sweet, which in Eleanor speak means she's horrified but desperate for him to move on. The girl is 23, works at a nail salon. They met when she did Eleanor's manicure. 23. Barely out of college. I felt a sliver of pity for the girl, but not enough to warn her. She would learn or she wouldn't. And Sophia I asked more out of politeness than interest. Transferred to Lisbon, then quietly let go 3 months later. Something about cultural fit issues. Last I heard, she was waitressing and trying to start a lifestyle blog. Beatrice finished her tea and left with air kisses and promises to keep in touch that we both knew were empty. I went back to my essays, the red pen, moving across pages that talked about Gatsby's obsession and what it meant to chase impossible dreams. Thursday afternoon was the Sterling Prep faculty meeting via video conference. I had kept my position there, teaching remotely 3 days a week. They hadn't wanted to lose me, and the arrangement worked perfectly. Before we wrap up, Dr. Martinez announced, I have some wonderful news. The board has approved our recommendation. Catherine Taylor, will you accept the position of head of the English department? My colleagues erupted in congratulations through their various screens. It was a position I had never even considered pursuing when I was managing James's ego, making sure I was never too successful, never too visible, never more accomplished than him. It's an honor, I said, meaning it. Thank you. Your innovative curriculum proposals were extraordinary, Dr. Martinez continued, particularly the interdisciplinary project with the history department. Brilliant, brilliant work. Not boring, not uninteresting, brilliant. That night I was making dinner when my phone rang. Unknown number, New York area code. I almost didn't answer. Then curiosity won. Catherine Taylor, yes. This is Jake Morrison. I was James's roommate in college. My hand tightened on the phone. Jake, I owe you an apology. A huge one. I should have warned you years ago. Warned me about James, about how he talked about you. Jake's voice sounded strained, guilty. He used to brag about having a placeholder wife. He said you were perfect for the image he needed, smart enough to impress people, but too boring to ever leave him. Too grateful to have someone like him to ever cause trouble. Every word confirmed what I'd already pieced together, but hearing it from someone else still stung. He said boring women were perfect for marriage because they'd never have options. They'd always be loyal because who else would want them? I should have told you at the wedding. I should have told you at the engagement party. But you know, bro code and all that toxic crap. Why are you telling me now? Because I heard what he did to you, what he said at that wedding, and I realized my silence made me complicit. You deserved none of that. Your revenge wasn't cruelty. It was just returning the same level of respect he'd shown you. Thank you, I said quietly, for telling me. There's more. He's been calling old friends, trying to borrow money, looking for job contacts. Everyone's ghosting him. He brought this on himself, but he still blames you. Says you destroyed his life over a joke. A joke. 4 years of marriage reduced to a punchline, and he was still calling it a joke. Saturday afternoon. I attended a talk at the Northshire bookstore, our local independent shop. The author was speaking about historical fiction, weaving together stories of forgotten women who had changed history from the shadows. I sat in the back row, a notebook in my hand, genuinely engrossed. Excellent question, the author said to someone in the front row about the agency of women who appeared to have no power. Professor Shaw, would you care to address that from a historical perspective? A man stood up tall, early 40s salt and pepper beard with a tweed jacket that should have looked pretentious but somehow didn't. His answer was thoughtful, nuanced, drawing examples from his own research. I found myself leaning forward, captivated by his perspective. After the talk, I was browsing the history section, when a voice beside me said, "You were taking some serious notes back there." Researcher's interest or teacher's Professor Shaw was there, holding a stack of books that suggested he was a regular. Both, I admitted. I teach English, but I'm always looking for historical connections to make the literature more relevant. His face lit up. Brilliant. Interdisciplinary approach. I'm Daniel, by the way. Daniel Shaw, Catherine Taylor. We talked for 20 minutes about books, about teaching, about the challenges of making history matter to modern students. He listened intently, asked follow-up questions. He laughed at my observation about teenagers thinking everything before 2010 is basically the Stone Age. Would you perhaps like to continue this over coffee? He asked. I know a place that makes the best lattes in town. I'd love that. If this tale of sweet revenge had you cheering for Catherine, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Catherine left the wedding ring on James's pillow with that devastating note, knowing he would wake up to a completely dismantled life. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss out on more thrilling stories like this one. Subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss an update.